Hi guys, there isn't much that wasn't already leaked about the Google Pixel 6 prior to launch, but here's confirmation of one key fact, somehow undercutting all of this year's high-end flagship launches so far. The Pixel 6 is an absolute bargain with very few compromises. The most important thing to note is that the Pixel 6 is the very first handset to be powered by Google's in-house Tensor chipset. Ditching Qualcomm and avoiding Exynos and Kirin, Tensor promises a handful of performance and efficiency improvements over last year's mid-range Snapdragon 765G, and it represents a bold new future for Google. Other concessions await in the display section. Instead of the 120Hz QHD panel of the Pro, the Pixel 6 makes do with a 90Hz full screen. It's not as big either, but at 6.4 inches, the non-Pro is not a small pixel like we had with the earlier generations. Google joins in on the no charger trend this time around, and the Pixel 6 arrives in a half-height box as has become the norm at the high-end market segment. The lid has a print of the actual phone on top, and the sides are color-matched as well, hence boring black on our review unit. In terms of accessories, inside the box you'll find a USB-C cable and USB A to C adapter, should you choose to plug in a USB stick or maybe transfer data from an old microSP-equipped phone using its own cable. If you only give them a cursory glance, there's not much to differentiate the Pixel 6 from the Pixel 6 Pro, especially if they're both face down. Look more closely, and it's obvious which is which, as the Pixel 6 has a smaller section of body above the camera module compared to the 6 Pro. If the light's right, you'll see the Pixel 6 camera module doesn't contain a periscope zoom camera, either. There's glass at the front and rear, which is quite a departure from the recent plastic-bodied Pixel phones, and both panels are constructed from Corning toughest phone glass yet, Gorilla Glass Vitis. There's also IP68 dust and water resistance, as well as an optical under-screen fingerprint reader in change from the rear-mounted fingerprint sensor of recent Pixels. On that note, the Pixel doesn't support face unlocking for the second year running. I'm sure there's method to Google madness, but at a time when we're already familiar with throwing our phones up to our faces to unlock them, its absence feels strange. Speaking of design accents, gone is the colorful power button. It's black this time around regardless of color option. That goes for the frame, too. The matte aluminum coming in black only. It is matte, too, as opposed to the glossy finish of the Pixel 6 Pro frame, and we dare say this one is less grippy. The power button is on the right side of the phone, above the volume rocker, a Pixel oddity that takes some getting used to. If you're coming from an older Pixel, you should be right at home, but if this is your first one, prepare for involuntary volume adjustments or taking random photos when trying to put the phone to sleep. On the opposite side of the phone, about a quarter up, is the SIM card tray. It'll only accept a single nano SIM with a provision for eSIM if you want to have two. There's no micro SD support, nor has there ever been. Unlike other phones that almost make it a point to advertise, the gasket around the card tray is made black and inconspicuous here, but fret not. The Pixel 6 has an IP68 rating for dust and water resistance. The bottom hosts the USB-C port, which is lined on the inside with plastic. Two identical-looking cutouts in the frame make way for the primary speaker and the primary mic. Another mic pinhole can be found up top. It's still in a mold, the Pixel 6 display, and at 6.4 inches in diagonal, it's anything but small. There's no small pixel this time around, as already established. The 1080 by 2400 pixels resolution works out to 411 ppi, a 100 ppi short of the Pro's density, but perfectly acceptable. We measured marginally lower results for brightness on the Pixel 6 than what we got out of the Pro, but both the manually attainable 477 nits and the ambient light mandated 846 nits are very good results. Competitors like the iPhone 13 or the Galaxy S21 are in the same ballpark, while the top-end iPhone Pros and the Galaxy Ultras go beyond the 1000 nit threshold. The Pixel 6 display is HDR10 Plus compliant. We got HDR streams in YouTube, Netflix and Amazon Prime Video, as expected. The 90Hz maximum refresh rate of the Pixel 6 is a decent entry into a high refresh rate. It works with a fairly simple auto-switching to 60Hz when you don't touch the screen for a couple of seconds in most apps. Games with high frame rate support get the full 90Hz, which is nice. Also nice is the apparently new toggle in developer options that lets you force the maximum refresh rate all the time. We hope this makes it to non-Google Android builds in the future. The Pixel 6 has a 4614 mAh battery inside, slightly smaller than the Pro 5003 mAh, but an adequate match for the display and chipset. In our testing, the Pixel 6 was good for over 20 hours of offline video playback, 5 more than the Pro. In Wi-Fi web browsing, however, the results are identical at 12.5 hours. Talk time was lower on the Pixel 6 at 21:14, still okay in our book. Taking into account the similar standby performance between the two, the Pixel 6 ultimately posted an overall endurance rating close to its brother's -86 hours. We tried a third-party 65 WPPS capable adapter and got to 48% in half an hour, close enough to the promised half-full, with the power being drawn maxing out at 20 watts and change. The 0 to 100% test took a lengthy 150h. The Pixel 6 has Android 12, making it as up-to-date as Android phones get. What I will note here is how much I like the always-on screen, which very helpfully shows a large clock and notification details, and also the general speed of the software. It's very fast throughout, but it's the larger buttons, clearer menus, and integration of Google Assistant that help you refine your workflow. I've even gotten used to telling Assistant to turn off the phone, rather than mess around with the repurposed power button. As a general taste of Android 12 on a Pixel 6, here are a few screenshots of basic UI elements. You will note the rounded corners of rectangles, the large quick toggles, the oversized labeling, the creamy accent colors. It's overall a very cozy place to be in. The Pixel 6 is powered by the proprietary Tensor chipset, a joint effort between Google and Samsung. It enables advancements in machine learning and computational photography that Google wouldn't have been able to achieve by using a Qualcomm chip. Quoted from Google Press event, as software applications on mobile phones become more complex, they run on multiple parts of the chip. This is heterogeneous computing. Google aim with the Tensor chip is that all the components inside work together efficiently rather than optimizing for peak speed. With that premise, we weren't expecting chart-topping benchmark results, and, indeed, we got rather meh numbers in Geekbench for both single-core and multi-core performance. This peak performance proved difficult to sustain, and in the 3D Mark Wildlife stress test, the Pixel 6 result dropped from a class-leading first run to less than half that at the very last loop. CPU stability wasn't stellar either, with a drop to 61% of peak performance in the CPU throttling test. Naturally, these are synthetic loads and very extreme ones at that, so they shouldn't be taken as a representation of real-world usage. If you want Google's best camera, you have to buy the Pixel 6 Pro, but the Pixel 6 still has the same main 50-megapixel and 12-megapixel wide-angle camera with a 114-degree field of view. It does not have the 48-megapixel telephoto zoom camera. The selfie camera is also different, with the Pixel 6 making do with a fixed-focus 8-megapixel camera in the hole punch cutout. The good news is that what you get for your money still sets the standard for the industry when it comes to smartphone photography. Detail capture has been seriously improved, capturing skin textures and wavy hair in portrait photos almost exactly as your eyes might see them. Skin tone is pleasingly neutral as well, and there's a good amount of definition separating my subject from the artificial bokeh blur in the background. The Pixel 6 new face unblur feature also works tremendously well when it detects a face in the frame while shooting in portrait mode. The ultra-wide camera captures an image with a faster shutter speed than the primary lens as soon as you press the button. The Pixel 6 then combines the two pictures in an effort to reduce blur on a moving subject. Here's the final image after telling my fiancé to spin around for a bit. The Pixel 6 has us muttering some valid if smallish complaints. Competitors have largely moved to 120Hz displays, and this one is still at 90Hz, though the jump from 60Hz to 90Hz is perhaps the more visible one. Charging is slow in the grand scheme of things, but about alright in the Pixel 6 single-quote-S context where that doesn't seem to be a priority. Tensor throttles, but so do the competing high-end Snapdragon or Exynos's. And for all its tendency to pick up lint from your pockets, the camera strip on the back is a rarely interesting-looking design choice. The one truly major downside of the Pixel 6 that we can't dismiss easily is the fact that it's only available in a dozen countries. That's just the reality of Google's smartphone business, and not something we see changing soon or at all. Going through hoops to import one elsewhere might require some proper motivation and justification. But if you're in one of those countries where Google officially sells a Pixel 6, just get one. The Pixel 6 Pro's higher price is reflected in its camera, its design, and the truly beautiful screen. If both are within your budget and you're unsure which to get, we'd recommend the Pixel 6 Pro every time. However, the Pixel 6 isn't that far behind if you aren't serious about the camera, and at $599, it represents excellent value. What a shame it's not substantially more compact than its more expensive sibling. Thank you for watching. See you soon.